Well, good morning, everybody. It is an honor and a privilege to share with you today. As was mentioned earlier, my name is Ben Jamison. I get to serve here on the Board of Trustees. And my book was mentioned as well, which is lovely. It's over in the bookstore. If you want to get one after service, I'm happy to sign it for you. And if you're a live streamer, get it on Amazon. I can't sign it for you, but get it anyway. It's a great book. In any case, today we're doing Songs You Never Thought You'd Hear in Church, which is where we take song suggestions from you and bring them into the sanctuary so that we can have an example of how we can look at things in our normal everyday lives that we wouldn't think could be spiritually inspiring and yet find spiritual inspiration there. So we just had the pleasure of Nikki singing Prince. Later we're going to get some Weezer, which will be an interesting experience as well. But for now, I Would Die For You. So I've heard this song growing up, right? I heard it many times, but I didn't really get past the main lyric, the I would die for you part. I heard that and I thought, well, okay, this is just another overblown pop love song where, Prince loves you so much he would die for you. Which I get the sentiment, but at the same time, if my wife were to say that she would die for me, I would say, well, that's really lovely, sweetheart, but I would really rather you not. We'll have a much better relationship if you don't do that. But I get the idea. But then this week, I had the opportunity to look deeper at the lyrics. It was a good reminder for me that oftentimes it's so easy for us to take that first impression and not go any deeper than that to the substance of what's really there. So that's the first lesson that we learn from this song, is that it's good to go beneath the surface, to really find out what we see underneath there. And when we look deeper at this song, we see that it's not just your typical pop love song. It seems to be written from the perspective of the Christ to all of us. In fact, it has lines like, I am the Messiah, right? So we see this idea of Christ itself singing to us. Now, we also note from the way the lyrics go that this comes from a bit more of a traditional interpretation of the Christ. In this song, the Christ would die for you. It just needs to know that you believe because it's told that you're a sinner, and if it just dies for you, then you can be welcomed back into the heart of God. It's that sort of mentality that the song is written from. In New Thought, though, we have a completely different perspective, right? We recognize that God is all there is. We began by saying there is only one presence and one power, active as the universe and as my life, God the good, omnipotent. So that must be what we are. We believe we are born in grace, that there is nothing we need to do to get back into the loving heart of God, because if God is all there is and exists everywhere, there's nowhere else we could be, friends, than right in the heart of God right here and right now. So how do we take this idea, which is maybe a little more traditional than what we're used to, yet still find meaning in it? Well, another thing that we note is that it talks about the Christ dying for us. And we also know that as God is birthless, deathless, and changeless, and the Christ, as the true nature of who and what we are, is also the same thing as that Spirit, it also cannot die. So this song must not be, as we interpret it for ourselves, a literal death. We have to look at something more metaphorical around what that means. And so when I dug into this, what I found is that, if the Christ is the true nature of who and what I am, this completely unconditionally loving presence, fully connected to Spirit all the time, absolutely wise and kind and loving and powerful, all of that, yet that's not my regular everyday experience, it must mean that that Christ is covered up. So in this sense, I would die for you, coming from the Christ to us, might mean that Christ is willing, that Christ of our own nature is willing to allow itself to be covered up by our doubts, our fears, our misbeliefs, our judgments, our belief in separation. All of these different things. It allows its light to be covered. But why would it do that? If this is our true nature and it's loving and it's light and it's brilliant and that's what we need, why would that Christ nature allow itself to be covered? Well, so that we could discover it. Have you ever had a present and you knew exactly what was in the present? And you opened it up? There's a certain level of energy and excitement around opening a gift that you know exactly what it is, right? Versus a gift that you have no idea what's in the box. There's so much more excitement and enthusiasm around opening that present. It's kind of the same thing on one hand, that if we don't have that opportunity to discover the Christ, we lose a little bit of the excitement behind it. Another way to look at it is this: if we were to have come fully orbed into this body in the realization of ourselves as Christ, having no context for a physical world experience, how would we relate to everybody else? It's that discovery. It's being able to know what it's like to discover our false beliefs, to forgive those judgments, to come bit by bit into the understanding of ourselves as the Christ that allows us to relate with everybody else here so that we can share, we can love, we can have community and connection, we can be present and not be alone in this mystical understanding of our divinity without having any context or connection of the physical world experience. So when this Christ says, I would die for you, it says, I'm going to allow my light to be covered so you can discover the glory of who and what you are and have fun doing it. Even though sometimes it's not so fun, right? But if we have this idea of opening a gift, maybe we can bring a little bit of extra excitement to the difficult times. So that's a very big and broad idea of what this song might mean. There's not a whole lot we can do with that personally, so I want to bring it down, bring it back to our own personal experience a little bit. And ask a question. I would die for you is the name of the song, so what are you willing to die for? Now, take a breath. This is not a big, overly dramatic question about what cause are you willing to lay down your life for. It's not that dramatic. It's even a little more important than that, though. What are you willing to let go of your current familiar situation for? What is your vision of your life that is so inspiring, so compelling that you're willing to let go of the familiar comforts and discomforts so that you can birth something new for yourself? There's a really great example of that we can share from our community. It's why I'm standing up here today. The Reverend Erin, who was living a child-free life and enjoying all of the benefits of not having to worry about diapers or feedings or all of the cost that goes along with babies. She was willing to let go of all of that known and unknown so that she could birth Reverend Erin as a physical world mother. That vision was so compelling, was so strong for her that there was no worry about the unknown in between. Well, I'm sure there was some worry about the unknown in between, but it was worth the journey. And so that's the question we need to ask ourselves, because if we don't, we get better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Certainly not the physical world devil, but those uncomfortable experiences, right? We're familiar in what we have now. It's familiar. It's not comfortable. There's comfortable parts, there's uncomfortable parts. But since we're familiar with those uncomfortable pieces, if we don't have a vision that's inspiring enough to pull us out of those familiar uncomforts, to be willing to step into the unfamiliar discomforts, we'll never get there. So what's your vision? What is your high, compelling vision that is pulling you from where you currently find yourself? Maybe a more important question, a deeper question, which we sometimes have to ask ourselves in spiritual practice. Do I even have such a vision? I'll be honest, when I started working on this talk, I realized that my vision was not good enough. The vision that I have for my life was not inspiring enough for me to get me to move as much as I would like to out of my current familiar discomforts into the unknown. I'm working on mine. I'm working on deepening it, finding a way to make it more exciting, more connected, more empowering to me so that it pulls me beyond where I currently find myself. So do you have that vision? And if not, how do you create it? How do we get to the point to where we have this inspiring vision for our lives that makes it willing and worth it for us to step out of our familiarity? I've got a couple ideas for you. So the first one is to actually sit down and do a vision, to actually go beyond these nebulous ideas of what we think we want, that we know we want, that's kind of just out there, and yeah, you know. A great example is about 7 years ago when my wife and I were planning our wedding. We knew what we wanted for our wedding. You know, everybody knows that general idea of weddingness, right? You want beautiful stuff and good music and good food and lots of people and happiness. All of this nebulous idea around wedding without a whole lot of clarity behind it. And the problem when you do that, the problem when you don't actually sit down and focus deeply on what you really, really, really want, is that all of the restrictions that you believe exist in the world filter through and muck up the works. So we had this very unclear idea of what we wanted for a wedding and tried to jam an unclear idea into the restrictions we believed we had around finances, around the time it would take to plan a wedding, around all of that. And consequently, it was awful. It was absolutely awful. We spent 3 hours one night online looking at paper plates. Literally. And at the end of that night, we were so close to canceling the wedding, uninviting everybody, and eloping because it was such a terrible experience. But what we realized is that we didn't have a clear vision for what we wanted. We hadn't sat back and said, okay, what is it that we really, really want? And how can we let go of these perceived restrictions in the physical world to actually go for what it is that we want? So we did that work. And a few weeks later, Sherry was 550 miles away from where we lived at a business conference, sitting at a table with another person who just so happened to live in LA where we lived at the time, and also just so happened to be planning a wedding and could refer us to a wedding venue that was far too expensive for us. Except for the fact that there was this amazing arts festival happening at the time, and so we couldn't have the entire space, which would have held 10,000 plus people, for ourselves. And our guests would have to go through the art festival, which would mean free access to the art festival. And because of all of that inconvenience, their prices were cut in half. Our florist charged us wholesale flower prices. That was it. We didn't pay them for their services at all. We didn't have roses, guys. We had orchids. And in the end, we got a wedding that, if we had followed the physical world restrictions that people typically follow, would have been at least 4 times what we paid for that wedding. But it was right on budget, because we took the time to have the clear vision without the restrictions that are so often in the background of our consciousness all the time because we don't pay attention to them. So when it comes to creating this vision for your life, one thing that we can do is we can sit down and first list out, with a pen and paper, actively engaged in this process, list out all of the restrictions that we believe box us into what we can have in our life. Maybe I'm too old, maybe I'm not old enough. What are the financial restrictions you believe you have? Maybe I'm too pretty, maybe I'm not pretty enough. Whatever it might be, listing out all of the things that come into your consciousness about why you can't have the things that you want to have. List those on a piece of paper. Take another piece of paper, and then sit down and start writing a compelling vision for your life. What are the things that you would be doing every single day that would bring you joy? What are the ways that you would be serving? How would you be connecting to people? What is the thing that just juices you up? No matter what it is about how you think you can or can't have because of what the physical world says, what is that thing? Begin to explore it, begin to experience it. While you're writing this down, while you're creating this vision, you may find at times that you feel constricted. Guess what? That's one of your limitations at play. Write it down. Consciously remove it from the process. At the end, we can look back at that vision that we've written and read it. Read it to ourselves. Does it feel inspiring? Does it feel uplifting? Does it feel like something that would pull us from where we are to where we want to be? Or do we find ourselves a little frustrated by that vision? Is there something in there that just irks us a little bit? Guess what? That's one of our restrictions that was at play, limiting that vision that we could create for ourselves. So we go back, we write it down, we do it again. And in the end, we've got 2 things. We've got the thing that we are willing to die for, that vision, and then the list of all the things that we have to die to in order to create that vision. All of the false beliefs, all of the doubts, all of the restrictions that we think are present upon us, that we can reframe, that we can look at in a new way, so that we can go for this amazing vision that we've created for ourselves. There's another practice that I want to share with you on how we can do this work. It's a very powerful practice. It's called visioning. The directions are in the book, but I can share it with you now how to do it. It's a way that we can connect in with our higher self, with our inner wisdom, with that divine presence and power in ourselves, and try to pull down some intuition, some wisdom into our physical experience. It begins with an invocation. Simply a prayer of recognizing the presence and power of Spirit all around us. Father, Mother, God, there is only one life. This life is perfect. It is the perfect life of God. It is present here and now, and it is unlimited wisdom, infinite peace, ultimate possibility. Whatever the words are for you, you recognize in your own consciousness God as all there is. And then unify yourself in your consciousness with that presence. As there is only this one life, it must be the life that I live. And everything about this one presence and one power must be true of me as well. For as God is, so I am. And call forward that experience of yourself being completely and fully unified with the presence and power of Spirit right there in your experience. Having a pen and paper ready, because this is an active process. And then take a moment to go into meditation, to center, to calm, to connect in as best as you can with that divine presence. And then ask a series of questions. First question, what is Spirit's highest vision for my life? Or for this event, or for this undertaking? What is Spirit's highest vision for this experience? And then we sit and we listen. We allow ourselves to receive. And whatever it is that we receive, we write down on the paper. It might be something incredibly inspiring and clear. It might be something that makes no sense. You might hear the word coaster and write down coaster. I've gotten weirder. You might not get anything. And that's fine too, because we have engaged in this process of being open to inspiration, knowing that whether we get something fully orbed that we can fully understand in the moment, something that makes no sense or nothing, that at the right time that inspiration will come. When we feel complete with that question, what must I become to empower this vision? These are our next physical world steps. These are the things that we need to work for in our own physical life in order to bring about this vision. Again, we sit, we listen. What must I release is the next question. All those things we need to die to. What must I embody is the next question. What are those things inside of myself that I need to accept, that I need to open to? The last time I went through this process, when I came to the release question, I heard doubt, fear, and worry. And when I came to the embrace question, I heard doubt, fear, and worry. You have to embrace the doubts and the fears and the worries that are in your experience, right? Because if you resist them, you're just holding on to them, really. You're just empowering them. You're not doing the work that it takes to look and accept the fact that I am a human being as well as a spiritual being, and I have these doubts and these fears that are doing things to me, that are helping me to grow. And if I resist them, if I don't accept them, then they can't work through me and be released. So I have to accept these things in order to then release them so that I can empower this vision that I have for my life. Final question, is there anything else at this point in time that I need to know? And we sit and we listen. The last time I did this, I heard a quote from a Disney movie, and I resisted it. It's from The Lion King. It's kind of embarrassing. I resisted it. I'm like, oh, come on, that's totally an ego thing. This is not me receiving intuition from Spirit. I'm not going to write down, "You are my son and the one true king" from The Lion King. Come on, that's dumb. That's really what it was. I resisted it, and it popped back in. I said, no, this is not ego work. This is spiritual work. I'm not going to do that. And I resisted it, and it popped back in. And so finally I gave up, and I wrote it down. And after writing that down, the floodgates opened, and more inspiration came. Because is it not true that the Christ of our nature is the Son or the daughter of God? And that as the only authority in our consciousness, we are the one true king in our own lives, the one true queen in our own lives, the one who can determine what we think, what we feel, how we react, the one who can determine our life's journey. We are the only ones that can do that, friends, because it is our consciousness. It is who and what we are. It is that Christ presence within us. So we can do both of these practices. We can sit in our best understanding and list all of the things that we think are blocking us so that we have this understanding of what we need to die to and the vision that we can create on our own that is inspiring to pull us out of where we currently are into the new. We can combine that with this process of visioning to get a higher understanding, maybe more context to put with the vision that we have created so that we get even more impelling energy towards this vision. More clarity on what we need to release, what we need to die to. And all of the while, we can recognize that at the very beginning, it was the Christ that said, I would die for you. I would allow the light that you are to be covered up by your false beliefs so that you could discover your inherent beauty and wisdom. And that all of this work on the life that is so inspiring that we're willing to let go of where we were to get to where we want to go is about that uncovering, is about that discovery. It's about letting go of our false beliefs so that the light that we are can shine forth. I would die for you, says the Christ of our nature. I would allow myself to be covered up so that you can discover me. And in the discovering of who you are, see that light in everybody else and support every other one of you beautiful Christ beings in your unfolding that light and that love and that glory. Friends, it is an honor and a privilege to see that light in you and as you. It's an interesting thing when we look for that Christ in other people. It's so much easier for us to see through the veil, through the false beliefs, through the covering up of that Christ in other people, than it is for us to see that in ourselves. So we can begin to practice seeing the Christ in everybody around us. And if everybody else were to begin practice seeing the Christ in me that I can't quite see yet, how would that support me in my unfoldment? Friends, I see that light as you. I know that truth for you while you go through your process of discovery and unwrapping the gift that the Christ as you is for the world. What I know for sure is that Spirit sings your praises. The entire universe conspires for your highest good. And God is so thrilled to call you the beloved. Thank you for your love and your attention and your time and your practice and the Christ light that you are. Namaste.